Great. Oh, I'm so glad to be here, talking to all you savvy ladies out there. And we're going to talk today about starting a small business, working from home for yourself. And why do you want to start a business? Why do you want to work from home? Well, there's many reasons why working from home could be a great idea. There is a pandemic going on. I hate commuting. I like to work in sweats. I love to work in sweats. And why starting your own business may be the right solution for you. For all the same reasons. There's a pandemic going on. I hate commuting and I like to work in sweats. Plus, your company may not allow you to work from home. Or maybe you just don't want to go to the office. Or maybe you lost your job. And that's something that I'm hearing a bit of. Or maybe you want to work from another or multiple locations. You could be one of those fortunate ones that have a second home that you want to be able to work out of. You also may hate having a boss. Nobody's going to tell me what to do anymore. You have an awesome idea for a business. This is the greatest thing since sliced bread. Well, you want to have control over your work as well as the hours that you want to work. Maybe you want to go at 10 o'clock, you want to go to the gym, which is in your living room, and work out for a little bit. And then you want to break for lunch when you want. And maybe you're willing to work into the evening, your hours. Well, maybe the best reason for starting your own business and working from home is because you can in this day and age. So some of the things that you need to do to get started after you figure out what type of business you're going into, that's not anything I'm going to help you with today. But we'll talk about some of the tax and compliance issues. Compliance meaning what types of filings, registrations might be necessary. Home office deductions. How do you take advantage of the fact that you're working from home and it costs you money to operate out of your home? Accounting, how to keep track of all the money you're making and all the expenses that you're paying out on. Some of the technology tools that can really allow this type of work to happen and can make your life easier. And then just I'll touch on promotion, marketing, and networking concepts in the digital age. So, tax and compliance issues. So, what legal form? And this is not in any particular order. And I'm going to try and fit everything into about 25 minutes or so here. So some things we won't elaborate too much on. But what legal form of business should you be? Well, if you just want to sell your services and you can make some money by doing this via email, via the internet, you could just be a sole proprietorship. That is a basic standard way of operating as a personal business. You don't have to do much to get started with that. You may decide that for liability reasons, you want to register as an LLC, a limited liability company, but still operate as a sole proprietorship, meaning it's just you as the owner. If you're two or more people, you might be a partnership. You could form a corporation. There's a couple of different types of corporations, but we're going to actually discuss all of this in more detail next week. For today's purpose, let's assume that you are either a sole proprietorship or you formed as an LLC. And if you're operating alone, you're what's called a single member LLC, which is a disregarded entity for tax purposes. So what do you need to register your business? You may or may not need a specific ID number. As a sole proprietor, you can use your social security number, and that's pretty typical. But if you're going to have employees, even one employee, you're going to be required to register for an EIN, an employer identification number. It's a very simple process. There's a link here that you can go online and you can do that for. If you're not going to have any payroll, then the IRS really doesn't want you to have a separate ID number, but you could. Now, for New York State purposes, assuming you're going to operate in New York State, you may want to register a name. Like maybe your name is Janet Levy, but you have a business you're starting called Janet Levy Design. Well, you probably should register with the state with a certificate of assumed name registration, which costs maybe $25, $35, but it puts the state and the world on notice that you are operating under an assumed name, which would prevent someone else from taking the name, at least in the counties that you register in. And there's a link here for New York State to help you if you wanted to apply for a business certificate. It's not necessary if you're just going to operate as yourself, but if you're going to take on an assumed name, where if you were a corporation, the assumed name would be part of the incorporation process. But in this case, you would apply for a certificate of assumed name. If you're operating in New York City, there may be some city license or registration that's required. There also could be some other state license, depending on the business you're going into. If you're going to be selling tobacco and cigarettes, well, there's certain registrations and taxes that are required for that. And that's something you could look up via this link here. Same with New York City, and there's a link for New York City here too. Are you selling goods or are you selling services? So let's talk for the moment about selling services, meaning you're providing consulting services. You might be doing writing. You might be an accountant. You might be a lawyer. You might be a psychologist. You generally don't have to be concerned with sales tax for consulting and for other services. But if you're selling goods to an end user, and selling goods could be as simple as you're going to be a middle person to help sell products. You can do this through eBay. You can do it through Amazon, where you build a website and people come to your website to buy certain supplies, and you help facilitate the sale of them. And maybe they're all drop shipped directly from the manufacturer, from a larger distributor. You may still need to register with New York State for sales tax. I'm not going to go into any more details for what's required on that, but the general rule for whether you need to register for sales tax is services usually are not subject, but there are exceptions. Selling tangible personal property or goods generally is subject, but there are exceptions. There is a website you can go to. I didn't put it in the PowerPoint. If you wanted to take this down, if you're interested, tax.ny.gov/bus/stidx.htm. And then you can get some more information on what's necessary for sales tax. If you've been working as an employee in the past and now you're going off on your own, you may or may not realize that since you don't have withholding taxes on your salaried pay, you're going to need to pay estimated taxes. And the estimated taxes are going to be based on your income during the current year, but could be based on one or two safe harbor rules, which means in the prior year. So the government likes to get paid taxes evenly while you're working. With withholding, it happens every paycheck. And with estimates, it happens every quarter. You don't really want to wait until the end of the year to pay all your estimates or pay all your taxes on April 15th, because the government might charge you a penalty for what's called underestimation. There are what's called safe harbor rules that allow you to meet the 90% of the prior year test to pay in the current year, and then any additional you could pay April 15th, or 110% of your current year. If you can estimate it quarterly, you can pay it in. I'm not going to go into more details on that, but be aware that if you're running a business and you're making money, of course you have to have a profit, which is a good thing, you'll have to pay estimated taxes. In New York City, if you're operating, you may be subject to what's called unincorporated business tax, UBT. This is 4% of your income over $85,000. So if you're not making a net after all your expenses of $85,000, you won't have to pay this tax. You may have to file the form, and you would file that with your personal return, but you won't be subject to paying the tax. Let's just talk for a minute. I touched on getting a federal employer identification number if you have an employee. The rules for payroll and whether someone is going to be treated as an employee or an independent contractor are fairly tricky, and they're strict, and they're by state. So New York State, through the Department of Labor, has their own rules. And just because you may want to bring on somebody to help you, and you're going to pay them as a freelancer. Maybe they work for other people, maybe they work for you part-time, or maybe you don't feel they're really an employee, they're working from their home. Just because somebody says to you that they're a freelancer, it doesn't mean that the government will accept the fact that you're paying them as a non-employee. So being an independent contractor could be a tricky thing if you don't pay attention to the rules and the requirements. So again, this is something I'm going to cover a little more next week, but there are rules to be followed here, and you need to be careful. What's happening now is many people are starting businesses, and because they're working through the internet from home, they can find independent contractors to help them across the country. And you then have to be careful. It depends on the threshold of how much you're paying someone. If you're paying them $500 for the year or one time, it's not an issue. But you start getting above $800, it becomes a little more of an issue. You may have to be careful crossing state lines, because somebody might live in Wisconsin, you're working in New York, and Wisconsin might want you to file in Wisconsin because you're paying someone there. Anyway, an accountant or a lawyer can help you with this issue. So let's talk about home office deductions. So again, this is for a sole proprietor or a member of a single member LLC. You're going to be filing your income and expenses for your business on a Schedule C as part of your Form 1040. So the things that are important to realize that you're entitled to the home office deduction if you have an exclusive area or portion of your home that's used on a regular basis for your business. So I have my home office set up in the corner of my bedroom. It's really not legitimate as a home office space, but I work for an accounting firm, and we actually have a main office, and I can get certain of my costs, like the computer and the like, taken care of, but I can't really deduct my home office expenses. But you may have a room that you're able to use just for business, and that's great. You could, especially if it's your principal place of business, because that's important, you could deduct part of your mortgage interest, real estate taxes, insurance, rent, repairs and maintenance, utilities. Then you could take depreciation on the cost if you owned, if it was a co-op or a condo, or if it's a house that you own. There's two methods to calculate the home office expense deduction. The simplified method is $5 per square foot up to 300 square feet for a maximum deduction of $1,500. The regular method, which can afford you possibly a larger deduction, is based on a percentage of your home that's devoted to business use. So if you have 4 legitimate rooms in your apartment, let's say, and one of those rooms is used exclusively for business, well, then 25% of your home is devoted to business use, and you can take 25% of all the expenses that are related to the full apartment or home and allocate them to your business, as well as any costs that are specific to your business, the computer, the monitor, all things of that nature. Couple of key things here to remember: that this is not available to employees. So if you're an employee for a business, you can't get a home office deduction, but it is available to homeowners and renters. And there's a form, 8829, expenses for business use of your home, which would be attached to your personal income tax return. There's a link for that form if you wanted to see how it works out. And there's a link to the IRS, which will tell you a little bit more about home office deductions. Let's just talk for a minute about how to keep track of your income and expenses, because I assume that you're going into business, you want to make money. The details are going to become onerous after a while if you're making a lot of money and spending a lot on your expenses. Well, you can certainly start off small and it's not a problem, but if your business grows, I recommend having a separate checking account for your business. It's not required by law as long as you can separate your income and expenses and report them for income tax purposes. But having a separate checking account, especially if you already have an account and maybe you can open a second one and there won't be fees attached, and you call it, instead of Jane Levy, you'll call it Jane Levy Special or Jane Levy Design. It's not necessary to have a particular name for it, but it's just a way, and you would deposit all your income in there and you'd pay your bills from there. And then as you need money, you would take it out and put it into your regular checking account. Again, if you're operating on a shoestring and you're not quite ready for that yet, it's not necessary. But it is important to keep track of your income and expenses. You also need to consider how you're going to receive and pay your bills. I'm a great believer in digital everything and no more paper, as little as possible. I like to pay my bills online. I'll use Venmo or Zelle. I try to avoid paying by check. I also don't like debit cards. Debit cards can be dangerous. If you can get a credit card just for business, that'd be terrific. Generally, you're going to get a credit card which will be in your name, but it could have your business name on it also, and it could be a separate card. And as long as you pay your bill every month, you're not going to have a problem, and the costs may be low. But it's a good way to keep track of things and to make your payments. But to really track your income and expenses using accounting software is, I think, a great idea. Now, a simple version of accounting software is Excel. If you're familiar with Excel, and many people are, it's a great way to keep track of things up to a point. And you certainly should start with that, if nothing else. But Quicken is really designed as a personal financial tracking system. QuickBooks is very easy to use, is designed for businesses. Xero is another product like QuickBooks. Some people like it better. Some say it's easier. And then there's QuickBooks Online, especially if you're going to be in more than one location, or maybe your business is going to grow and you want to bring in a bookkeeper who will work from another location, or maybe you'll have a partner who work from somewhere else and you want to both have access. Using an online accounting software is a great idea, and it's pretty easy to use. So let's talk about some of the technology that you would need to run your home office. You may be aware of all of this, some of this, but I'm going to go through it, and hopefully I can be helpful here. So having a computer, key. Desktop or a laptop. Desktops tend to be a little cheaper, and then you have to get a separate monitor. Laptop is great if you want to be able to move it from room to work or to go to another location. Laptops have become much more affordable. Personally, I like things digital. I also don't like wires, so I use a Bluetooth keyboard and mouse, which are, Bluetooth is a technology kind of like infrared, but it just works in a different way, and it works with your phone, your iPhone, with your smartphone, with all computers these days. You just turn it on, and if it's a Bluetooth device, it looks and it matches them up. You may have seen it in a car. New cars now have Bluetooth to allow you to connect your phone to the radio system. Monitors, as an accountant, we like to use 2 or 3 monitors. We find it really helpful, especially to do tax returns. But I think 2 monitors is a very useful thing for just about anybody in everything. And for $100, you can get an extension monitor that plugs right into your computer and actually is powered by your computer, so it doesn't even have to plug into the wall. And you can move it around. Great tool. The scanner. So if you're receiving paper, if you're either getting mail or you have paper in your business, but you want to digitize it, and I think that's a great way to go because paper just becomes a mess after a while. Get a scanner. They're not too expensive. I just recommend one, the Fujitsu ScanSnap is an excellent one. And you can scan a document and it'll allow you to store it any number of places. You can also scan it directly to email. Printers are not as important these days as they used to be, but if you need to do presentations of any sort, you might consider a color inkjet printer for that purpose. Counting software I talked about before, collaboration software. So you're all here via Zoom, I assume. So Fuse. Zoom has become very popular and ubiquitous. Everybody's having Zoom meetings these days. GoToMeeting is another one. Microsoft Teams. These are great tools, and there are free versions of most of them available. In my company, we use Microsoft Teams to work together. So I can connect with one of my staff people, and we can be as if we're across the table from each other. And we're sharing documents, we're working in software together. We see each other, we're talking. Great stuff. You really can do so much now that you couldn't do before. Faxing, most people don't need faxes. As an accountant, I deal with the IRS, and the IRS is still old-fashioned, doesn't accept anything by email or send anything by email. And the reason for that is that faxes actually are more secure than anything. It's very hard to hack a fax. But there's software like eFax, which allows you to use your email to send a fax and receive faxes into your email. Great tool if that would benefit you. General productivity, whether you're using a Mac or PC-based, you're going to want something like Microsoft Office for word processing, spreadsheet, email, and the like. Microsoft 365 I found to be a really good way to go. It's totally cloud-based, meaning you don't have any software that's on your desktop. If anything goes wrong or if it gets updated, it just gets updated in the cloud. And you can also, for one license, share it on multiple computers. Another productivity tool that I like is something called Evernote. If you're not familiar with it and you're looking for something that can help you keep track of information, keep track of websites, have links, have copies of documents, all in one place so you can refer to it and share it even. Evernote's a really interesting tool. I suggest you take a look at it. For general document management, you want some way to store your documents safely. Storing them on your hard drive, if you're not going to back them up, is not a good idea. If you're going to back them up regularly and you keep the backup in another location, then that's good. But backing up to the cloud is a great idea. It's become very cost effective. I use something called Dropbox, which is a great system for that, and it's available at a pretty low cost. Just to finish up, talk about a few things that you may be aware of, but that can help you in running your small or even large business from home. So business cards. Business cards are still a great idea. They're very cheap to have made up. But what you then do is you get a digital business card. So you have an imprint of your business card, which is digitized, which you can send. You can have it on the bottom of your email. You can have it sent with letters, all different ways. Now, letterhead may or may not be necessary for you to get a physical letterhead because you can create a digital letterhead that looks great. It's what we use at our firm for everything. So I have a Word document which has our letterhead in color embossed on there. And I have a digital signature of my signature, which I can pull onto the letterhead. I also use that digital signature for forms that I need to fill in, that I want to submit, that I don't have to print out, sign, and then mail, or then scan and send digitally. Because digital signatures, ever since President Clinton, have been accepted legally in most documents. Not all. Real estate contracts, it's not acceptable. Wills, a few other things. But it's a great way to go, and you should consider it. A website, even if it's only one page, and it's very inexpensive to do, there are services out there that will allow you to design, and they will manage your website for you. One page becomes a calling card. Also makes you look a little more impressive. You could put information up there that can be beneficial, and it's a good way to promote yourself. Social networking, the one that I think is the most important for business is LinkedIn. And I think you can still sign up for free, and it becomes like your online resume or business card. It can be simple. You can have as many details as you want to present, and then you can connect with people. You can also go to LinkedIn and look up. So if you're looking to do business with someone, it's good to check and see if they're on LinkedIn, and you can read about them and learn about them. Trademarking, we're not going to talk about that today. There will be another seminar coming up on intellectual property and what you might need to do there. And lawyers usually will say everybody needs to protect their trademarks. So I think we're about at the end, and I feel like we breezed right through this, and we have time for questions if anybody has.
Okay, thank you, Peter. That was great. We will open it up for Q&A now. So if you have a question, you can use the chat box, or you can also email info@savvyladies.org. And Peter, the first question is asking if you can register your business in a different state from where you live and pay your personal income taxes.
Absolutely. In fact, if you're going to do any business in another state, then you should register in that state. If you're saying, can you register in another state and not in the state that you're living and working in, that could be problematic. It may not be a good idea, but it would depend on the circumstances. One of the reasons for registering, it actually protects you in the case of a lawsuit. It gives you the ability to sue somebody. If you're not registered in the state and you're doing business, you don't necessarily have the ability to sue somebody that cheats you. So it's one of a number of reasons to register.
Right. Okay. Okay. Thank you. The next question says, I want to start an Etsy shop. Would I need to register my own business to do that?
To remind me what an Etsy shop is. Etsy is the selling of household goods and the like.
Yes, I think it's kind of become a lot of people that set up Etsy shops, and I think it kind of covers a lot of things, crafts and goods and everything like that.
Yeah, I'm not sure what their requirements are, and that's who you really need to check with. If you're putting yourself out there as an agent of Etsy, and Etsy may have a means that allows you to do that, then maybe you don't need to register yourself as a business. But you need to check with them. And I know people who have formed their own businesses that sell goods over things like eBay and Amazon and some other services. So it depends on how you're holding yourself out, whether you're holding yourself out as Jane Levy household goods, or whether you're just Etsy. I don't know. That would depend.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. This next question starts off by saying, thank you so much, Peter. This was great. I just started last year. I just started last year as an LLC and made only $800 as I was also working a traditional HR job. I spent more on marketing, website, etc. than $800. Do I still need to pay taxes on the $800?
Okay, so you made $800. You spent more than that. Was that the first year you operated? If it is the first year you operated, you could take a loss on your business. If you legitimately were in business with the intent of making money and not as a hobby, and you had a loss in your first year, that is very common, very typical, and you could subtract that loss from your other income, which could be very beneficial to you. Most accountants would be able to help you with that concept, but that's something very important to realize.
Okay. Oh, follow up here. Yes. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Okay, thanks for that, Peter. And another question says, if the business brings people into the home, like music lessons, what type of insurance is needed?
Oh, good question. You want to have some homeowners policy that protects your property, but also a liability policy, which either could be part of the homeowners or might be what they call an umbrella policy, which typically is when you go over the minimum standard of, I think, $300,000. You could speak to any insurance broker can help you even with the minimums for that. But you want to protect yourself if somebody falls and hurts themselves, that you have liability. And if you're operating your business as a sole proprietor, then it's going to be a personal policy. If you're operating as an LLC and they come to your home for the purposes of utilizing your services as an LLC, you still should have a homeowner's policy because it is a personally owned home. But it'd be a little trickier as to how they would sue you if they did get hurt. They probably could sue you both personally and the LLC. Remember, the advantage of the LLC is you personally can't be sued beyond the assets of the LLC. But that has more of a benefit in some areas where it's a little more clear. There's a distinction between the business and the personal.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Another question here is asking about using your kitchen for a business. Are there problems, I guess potential problems with Board of Health or licensing issues?
There could be, yes. So it depends on what it is you're doing. If you're cooking in your kitchen and you're selling the goods that you're cooking, I bet there are requirements, either New York State or New York City, and you would need to look those up. And maybe there's Board of Health issue. I just don't know, but I imagine there would be. And I guess that information should be available on the internet. I would go to New York State, but also look at New York City. They may have different rules.
Okay. Peter, can you, we will make sure that we send this over email, but can you repeat the link that you said earlier that wasn't written down for anyone that's on the call now and wants to take advantage of it? Is
Yes.
that tax one? Okay, thanks.
TAX period NY period GOV /BUS /ST /STIDX period HTM.
Okay, thank you. And again, we will make sure that we send that to everyone over email so that you have the link directly.
Sorry, that was left off. If you Googled New York State sales tax, you're going to get this link.
Oh, okay, great. Good to know. Okay, I think this is the last question, Peter. It's asking, do you recommend getting an LLC for a consulting business if you work from home?
It's a really good question. So it's going to depend on a number of threshold issues. How much business are you doing? How much do you think you're going to be able to do? Are you giving the kind of advice that people might sue you because you gave them the wrong advice? An LLC is not going to protect you against gross negligence, but it will protect you against most other things. The problem, and I'll talk about it next week, but the problem with forming an LLC, the formation of it is not very costly. But in New York State, you're required to publish. And you have to publish in 2 publications, one of which can be a local penny saver, but the other one typically, and this is where the lawyers got involved in the formation of the LLC law, it has to be in something like the Wall Street Journal or the New York Law Journal, and it can cost $500 to publish. And that purpose of that is to put the world on notice that you formed an LLC. You could form the LLC in Delaware, like many people form them in corporations, and it's not very expensive, but you still need to publish in New York State. So you're going to have to weigh that against how much business you're doing. If you're going to make $5,000 for the year, well, maybe it's not worth it. But if you're going all in and you're going to have a great business and you're making $50,000, $80,000, $100,000, I would dot all the I's and cross all the T's.
Okay, great. Good to know. Very good to know. Okay, I'm seeing a question that came in over email about the slides. And yes, so we'll make sure that we send everything to everyone by email, and we'll be sure to send the links that were in this presentation as well as the additional one that Peter mentioned. And we will also make sure that we send everyone the link for part 2, which is coming up next week, that Peter will be presenting as well next Wednesday, part 2. I hope everyone can join us for that. So I want to thank everyone for joining us and asking questions. And I want to thank you, Peter, for a great presentation today and sharing a lot Absolutely. Of helpful information for everyone, and hope everyone can get started with their small business.
Yeah, absolutely, my pleasure. And as you see on the last page, I have my email information, my phone number. You have a question, reach out. Happy to answer, especially quick questions, or I can help guide you if it's something more complicated. I'd be happy to do that.
Okay, great. And Peter, I just wanted to let you know, I'm seeing a lot of messages here in the chat of everyone thanking you, a lot of helpful information, very informative. Great. So again, thank you so much, Peter.
I'm glad to do this. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Take care, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.